All right, so this sheet is our chance to kind of practice reading Python sound code and following it through and kind of understanding exactly what's happening with it. So here we have a function called reverse, which is basically going to flip a sound and make it play backwards. All right, but let's go through the code line by line by line to sort of see what's happening. So the first line says target equals make empty sound, get length of source, comma 44,100. All right, so this represents the sampling rate. And get length of source is basically saying, all right, here's our source file down here at the bottom. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 values, even though they're numbered 0 to 3. So this is basically saying make an empty sound that can store 4 values, and the sampling rate at which is going to be played is 44,100. So when you make an empty sound, it actually places zeros in each of those boxes. So we now have this target sound that has zeros in all 4 of those boxes. All right. Next, we're creating a variable called source index, which is the length of source minus 1. All right, so the length of source is 4. So this is effectively 4 minus 1, which is 3. And again, because it's numbered 0 to 3, this is the location of the last value. All right, get length will give you the total number of values, but you have to subtract 1 if you want the location of the last value. All right, then we're setting up a loop, and we're saying for target index in range 0 to get length of target. Again, target is 4 long, so it's basically saying a range from 0 to 4. All right, and we know that when we do a range 0 to 4, it's only going to actually give us 0, 1, 2, and 3. All right, we never actually get that last number. So target index is just going to go through the values 0, 1, 2, and 3. All right, then we have this source value, which says get sample value at, and we're getting it from the source file, and we're using the source index, which we know is 3, all right, because that's what we set it to up here right above the loop. So effectively, we're getting the very last value from the source file. Then we're setting sample value at, and we're setting the sample value at the target. We're using the target index, which starts at 0, and we're setting it to the source value. So again, the source index is starting at 3, length minus 1. The target index is starting at 0 because our range was from 0 to the length. All right. So effectively what we're doing is we're taking this negative 123 and we're putting it down here in spot 0. Then we subtract 1 from our source index. All right, so our source index is going to go from a 3 to a 2. And then we go back to the top of our loop. And when we go back to the top of our loop, our target index is going to go from 0 to 1. So this time, we're going to take this negative 365, and we're going to place it in spot 1. And then our source index is going to go down by 1, and our target index is going to go up by 1. So now we're saying, all right, take this 19 and put it in spot 2. All right, and then our source goes down by 1. Our target index goes up by 1. And notice we're now to the end of the loop. This is the last iteration of our loop. So we're going to take whatever's in spot 0 and place it in spot 3, which is going to be the 47. So effectively, we've just taken the sound file and we've flipped it around. All right. The front has become the back and the back has become the front. All right. And we did that by creating one variable that started at the end and a second variable that started at the beginning, and then just use those as our indexes to flip them back and forth. All right. So now let's take a look at the back. Okay, so the program on the back doubles the frequency. All right, so if we're doubling the frequency, we're not going to need as many samples. So if our original file has like 8 samples and we're doubling the frequency, we're basically compressing everything. So we're not going to need that full 8 samples. We're only going to need half of that. So the very first line here is length equals get length of source divided by 2 plus 1. That's just recognizing that when we double the frequency, we're sort of compressing everything. We're doing everything quicker. So we don't need as many measurements. And the reason there's a plus 1 is this is in case the length is odd. And you're going to see why that matters when we trace through our example here. So when the number's even, we're actually going to have a blank space at the end. When the number's odd, that blank space would get filled in. But regardless, we don't know at the start whether it's odd or even. So we're just going to always add that plus 1, because if we have a little blank spot at the end, it's not going to matter. All right. So for us, our source down here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're getting the length of the source and doing 6 integer division 2. Doesn't matter because it's even, but it would if it was odd. And that's going to give us 3. And then we add 1 to that and get 4. All right. So length is going to have the value 4 in it. All right. And then we're going to create a new sound called target. All right. It's going to have a length that we just calculated, and we're going to give it the same sampling rate as our source. So whatever the sampling rate of our source was, we're going to give it that same sampling rate. So for us, I already specified that length is going to be 4. So here's our file down here. And just remember that when you make an empty sound, all of those are being initialized to 0, because 0 is effectively silence. All right, so now I have this variable target index, which is going to start off at 0. So let me fill that in right here. And then I have a loop called source index, which is going through the range 0 to get length of source, comma 2 means we're counting up by 2, not 1. When you provide that third parameter, it's how much you're going up by. So this says, all right, we're going from 0, the length is 6, so 0 to 6, but we're counting up by 2s. So what we'll actually get here is we'll get 0, we'll get 2, we'll get 4, and then we're not actually going to get 6, because remember, you always stop 1 short. So if we were counting up by 1s, it would be from 0 to 5. But because we're counting up by 2s, we're only going to get 0, 2, and 4. So again, when it's even, we're actually only going to end up using 3 out of these 4. But if this had been odd, then we would have used all 4 of them. So again, the plus 1 is just to kind of take care of the situations where you have an odd length. All right, now what's actually happening here? So we're saying source value equals get sample value at source comma source index. So the source index started at 0, which basically means we're grabbing this 47 right here. All right, that's the value that we're grabbing. And then we're setting the sample value at target comma target index. and we're using that source value. So this 47 is going to get copied down here. Then our target index goes up by 1. All right. We loop back up to the top, and our source index, instead of going up by 1, goes up by 2. So our source index is 2, while our target index is 1. So that means we're skipping over this 19. We're going to get this negative 365, and that's what's going to get copied down into target index 1. All right, so you can see that we're doubling the frequency by basically just taking every other value. All right, so we set that value, target index goes up to 2. Source index, again, because of this third parameter, goes up by 2 instead of by 1. All right, so we're going to take the value at location 4, copy it into location 2. So that's going to have a 57. All right. Technically, at this point, target index would go up, but then our loop is going to end. Like, we're not actually going to be able to do anything with it because there's no extra value there. So target index would go up to 3, but nothing's going to happen because the loop's going to end. All right. It doesn't actually get up to 6, remember. It stops at 4. So then our program is over, and this is our new sound. And again, this last little one, you're never going to notice it because it's just one tiny value. But we create it because if there had been an odd number, we would have been able to run this loop one more time, and then we would have needed the space to sort of put that in there. All right. So again, just kind of showing you different effects that we can do and walking you through this sound code until we get a little more comfortable with it. As always, if you have any questions, just let me know and we will go from there. All right.